Okay, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Momentum Trading Lab. All right, let's get into it. So let's quickly recap the analysis from yesterday, the pre-market analysis, and I'm just gonna quickly go into the Discord for that. It's just gonna be the easiest. So just to recap, let me maybe open this in the browser. Okay, so yesterday when we were looking at the dollar index, we said that it was at a key level. Unfortunately, it's not on this chart, but it was this volume imbalance. Quickly zoom in on that. So that is called a volume imbalance if you have that gap in between the candles. And typically the algorithm refers back to that price to basically reprice it efficiently. And as you'll see, we came into it and then got a little move to the downside into this fair value gap. The other indication that we had was if we looked at the momentum master B, we had a bearish divergence on the RSI as well as the Williams, which is our strength indication. So just combining this information with the fact that we were at this key level with multiple imbalances to the downside with liquidity pools. So we also identified these levels right here as relative equal lows. So it was likely that price action would come down so that the market makers could knock out all of the long positions right here. So that's where we were. And then we got that little move into this fair value gap. So this was the draw on liquidity for today. I still think it's likely that the dollar index could, let's remove this. Okay, so this is our Fibonacci from this low to the high. Right, so the equilibrium for the discount will take us to 104.025 more or less. And then we also have this fair value gap in between these three candles. And I believe on the 4 hour, we also have these relative equal lows. So this is our buy side liquidity. So they already came for this pool, came into the fair value gap. And then also if we look at the momentum master B, it still looks like it's got a lot of dump left in it. You can see the momentum is going to the downside. And then we identify that bearish divergence on the RSI and on the Williams. And now we can see that the MACD is also starting to roll over. So basically all of the oscillators on the momentum master B on the daily chart is pointing to the downside. So I think it's likely over the course of the week that the dollar index could move into this fair value gap right here and then potentially find some support right here at the Fibonacci 618. And let's quickly just recap the Nasdaq before we continue. So I'm just gonna delete everything. Okay, and this was yesterday's Nasdaq chart. So we said that the Nasdaq retraced into a discount and into this fair value gap. And then we assumed that there was going to be a bunch of buy side liquidity built up above these relative equal highs. And then we also have this volume imbalance, the same as what we saw on the dollar index. And we saw here that price came all the way back to this level and then got rejected. So it seems likely that the Nasdaq could also gravitate towards this level. And then like we mentioned, we also have these relative equal highs. So that's our buy side liquidity. So we said that the draw on liquidity sorry about that. We said that the draw on liquidity is going to be to the upside. and more specifically towards these relative equal highs and the buy side liquidity. And then during the course of the overnight session, we got this little move to the upside and basically took out the previous day's high at, it was more or less at 15,390. All right, so let's get a fresh chart. So from today, I'm using the December contract because my Ninja trader has rolled over to the December contract. I'm going to start doing all of the analysis on the NQZ chart, which is the December contract. All right, so I'm going to delete everything. And there was a little sneaky imbalance here that I've missed previously and only noticed it today. So I have to zoom in quite a lot to see it. So right there. So this also acted as a magnet for price action, along with the liquidity that we have above this high. And then the previous day high would have also acted as liquidity for price action to draw to. So this was the previous day high. I'm just going to label this as BD8. Just going to close that for now. Now let's see if it came into a premium for this little leg to the upside. Came right into the premium, took out the previous day high, and then also came into this imbalance. And now as we can see on the daily chart, we are getting a little bit of rejection. Let's have a look at the momentum master. Okay, so like we mentioned yesterday and I think during last week as well, that the momentum to the downside seemed weak, and we can see it right here that it's starting to flip back to the upside. The money flow is getting very extended, and it is very far away from the RSI, so this is a bearish indication. So typically price action likes to come or price action needs to retrace to the downside to reset the money flow below the RSI. And then when you have the money flow below the RSI and far away from it, that's then your bullish indication. All right, so a little bit of mixed signals. It looks like the Williams wants to make another run to the top and make that double top before coming down. And then the rest of the oscillators is looking a little bit indecisive. Okay, so let's go to the 4-hour chart and see what's going on. Okay, so this was that daily imbalance. I'm just gonna hide that. Current interval only. Also came right into this little imbalance right here. See how precisely it came into this area again. These imbalances work very well to find support and resistance areas. As you can see, this came, the low was 15,352. So this was basically 1 point and 1 tick away. So just touched it and then started to move away from it. All right, so let's do our little top-down analysis. So right here, there's equal highs. So most of the buy side liquidity will sit above these highs and this high. The buy side liquidity. And then we have a fair value gap right there. Right, so there was basically multiple signals pointing that we could see this little move to the upside today. On the daily, we had the buy side liquidity right here, volume imbalance, and then this fair value gap right here on the 4-hour. So you have to say that this fair value gap is a bearish point of interest on the higher term time frame. Also came right into the premium area and started to move away from it. And then on the 1 hour, relative equalize into that 4-hour fair value gap. Then got to move down, but you can't see any visible displacement on the 1 hour. Came right into it. So now we have a bunch of sell side liquidity built up below these lows. Have a look at the 15-minute. You can see they pushed it right into the buy side liquidity, rebalanced the fair value gap on the 4-hour. And then this was your market structure shift right here. So this was the very last higher low. So that is definitely displacement below the previous low. Okay, so yesterday going into today we had the bullish sentiment, and basically in the overnight session we got this nice little run up into that 4-hour bearish fair value gap. Took out buy side liquidity, then displaced to the downside. So this displacement to the downside tells me that there was buy stops in this area, then they pushed it to the upside and larger players bought up all of these stops. So now obviously they would want to pair their short positions with the stop losses of the guys that went long and still have stop losses below these lows. So you kind of now have to flip from a kind of bullish sentiment for the morning session to kind of bearish. So in that fair value gap, well, we did dump during the morning session, but leading up to the morning session we had this nice little run up. And that's going to be a very nice target right there. The equal lows equals sell side liquidity below. And let's also get a fib from the high to the low. So it's already came into the premium area. Okay, so it looks like there's definitely a nice short building up. Go to the 5-minute. Okay, so there's a bunch of highs right here. So what I think the setup is going to be, okay, so we have these equal highs right there. So guys that went short right here and that are trailing those stops will likely trail it to this area. And we also have a fair value gap right here. So my feeling is that they, in the afternoon session, is that they just stab it into this area, clear up out the buy stops, and then we'll see displacement to the downside. So you will just use a little trend line like this, and then just keep following the very last higher low. And then once we displace below that low and create a fair value gap on the 5-minute or lower, so in between the 5 and the 1 minute, that's going to be your entry right into that box. And then the very last target is going to be these relative equal lows. First target right here. See if there's any imbalances right here. I'm gonna go to the 15-minute for that. So there was one right here where they came down into it and then started to move away from it. So we'll just have to watch this level. If we start to dump, it might find some support right here. But seeing that we can see the bearish order flow right here, which tells us that larger players bought up the stops. and I will now want to see the price of the Nasdaq go lower so they can pair their take profits with the stop losses in these areas. Let's go back to the 5 minute. Okay, I think that is gonna be kind of like the A plus setup that I'm gonna target for the afternoon session. Admittedly, I did not trade this morning. I watched the price action the whole morning, but it just didn't form my entry setup. So I did most of it. So it took out an old high, so raided the liquidity, then displaced below an old low. So that was your old low, and then it created the displacement and fair value gap that I wanted to see, but it didn't tap into it, so it just continued to dump. So I didn't get my trade this morning. So I'm going to be definitely be looking in the afternoon, and right now it seems like this is the likely setup. Just knock out the liquidity right here, market structure shift. So if price does something like this, just keep tracking the very last higher low with your trend line, and then as soon as we displace below it, create that little fair value gap, and that's where you enter right there in that gap. And then as we discussed, just pair your take profit with the stop losses below the lows. So the first one is going to be right there. So if you enter around there, you sell just below the low, that's about 60 points. And then the last target is going to be about 100 points. Okay, I just want to make this chart nice and neat. I just want to post this into the Discord quickly. And then if you guys want, you can just go and grab it in my channel in the Discord. Okay, so as we discussed, relative equalize. 5 minute fair value gap. This is going to be TP1. So you pair your short position with the sell side. I mean, you could also just target some of the low hanging fruit. So this depends on if you enter with 3 contracts or more, then I would sell some right here and then more right here. That's going to be TP2. And then let's see if we can get this TP as well, because we have those equal lows right there. Okay, so we want to see price action stab into this area and then displace, retrace, and then go for our TPs. Okay, so wait for the market structure shift and displacement. Okay, so this is going to be the one potential setup. Okay, so Nasdaq potential short setup. Forming wait for liquidity rate above the equal highs. Wait for market structure shift and displacement. Enter short in fair value gap in the displacement leg. Okay, so if you want that chart, you can go grab it in there. Okay, so let's clean some of this up. Okay, before we continue, let's have a look at ES and just see what that is doing. Okay, let me also get the December contract for ES. Okay, and then ES basically did exactly the same thing as the Nasdaq. Came into discount into the fair value gap right here and then started to move away. Took out the previous day's high, also in a bearish fair value gap right now. Let's have a look at the 4 hour. Didn't the Nasdaq have a... basically looks the same. This one just kind of stabbed through the fair value gap on the 4 hour, but didn't close above it. Let's see if ES came into the premium. Yes, it did. It just stabbed into it. Okay, so basically the same thing happening on the 15-minute. We came into the buy side liquidity, then displaced below the previous low. So on the 15-minute, we are in a bearish structure, same as with the Nasdaq. So let's see, we didn't have the relative equal highs right here like we had with the Nasdaq. We had these equal highs. It doesn't really matter. We had a high right there and we moved above it and then displaced to the downside, telling us that someone bought up all the buy stops in this area. And then this was the very last higher low. So displacing below that level gives us a bearish market structure shift. Okay, so sell side over here. Okay, so equal highs. So it looks like this is just going to potentially be the same setup. We also have a gap right here. So I think with ES, they could potentially move it to the upside to take out the buy stops and then move it into this fair value gap to reprice it. And then we just wait for that market structure shift. Fair value gap, and then if price retraces into that fair value gap, then you can enter short with your stop above that high right there. And then for your first TP, you can just pair it with one of these lows. So target the low hanging fruits for your first TP. Next one definitely over here. So this was the low from the morning session. Equal highs. Want to see if there's any fair value gaps. So accurately it came into this fair value gap, then started to move away from it. Another one right there. And this is significant. This is on the 15-minute. Go back. Because if you get displacement below the low with a fair value gap in the displacement leg, we see a retrace into that box, then we can go short. TP1 is going to be here. So this is the low hanging fruit. TP2. And then I think TP3 right at this fair value gap should be fine. Okay, so the afternoon session is about to start in about a minute and a half. Looks like they're moving towards that area. Let's have a look at the Nasdaq. My drawing is gone. I might have deleted it. Alright, so just to recap, we are targeting a sweep of these highs, displacement, and then we are gonna enter short and then run it towards these lows. Also have relative equal lows right there. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, let's have a quick look at Bitcoin. So this setup played out perfectly. Unfortunately, I didn't try this, but I did the analysis on this. So what I saw during the weekend was that there was a bit of a fractal playing out. So if we just look at this price action, we had these relative equal highs with a 4 hour fair value gap. They came into it. They just touched the equilibrium, then dumped, and then right here, the same thing. Relative equal highs with this 4 hour fair value gap. Then they just tapped into it. Also just touched the equilibrium, and then dumped it straight to the sell side liquidity right here. Quickly just delete everything and just have a fresh look at this. Okay, so there's still an untouched low right here. So for this leg to the upside, the liquidity below this low is the external range liquidity. So I think that will at least bring it below this low, because price moves from external liquidity to internal liquidity. So we could see them stab it in here and then start to move to the upside a little bit again. Maybe just knock out some buy side liquidity before heading lower. Because we still have this imbalance right here. And I think this imbalance is also a CME gap. Yes, we have that CME gap at 21,250. More or less in the same area. So what they could potentially do is knock out all the longs push it to the upside, knock out some shorts, and then move it to the CME gap right here at 21.5. Quickly go to the weekly. Back to that daily. So that imbalance at 21.5. This is also a Fibonacci 618 retrace. So I think it's likely they knock out the external liquidity for this leg up, then push it back to the upside just to knock out some buy side liquidity so they can fund the rest of the journey to the downside, then move it towards the CME gap, and then we could see from the Fibonacci 618 maybe another leg to the upside. That is what I am thinking right now for Bitcoin. Still in this imbalance right here. Yeah, so I think that is what's likely to happen for Bitcoin next. Take out that low, little move to the upside just to knock out buy side, dump it to the downside towards the CME gap. Alright, then with that being said, that's my analysis for today. Thank you guys very much for jumping in today, and then I'll be back tomorrow at around the same time for more analysis. And until then, thank you.